All right. Check. Check 1. Check 2. Check 3. Check 4. Check 5. Check 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Welcome to the Cannabis Coffee Hour with your host, me, Rob Cantrell, coming to you live and direct from the internet and beyond. Thank you for tuning in to the Cannabis Coffee Hour. I got a great big jug of coffee. I'm on my second French press. I actually had 2 clean French presses. I literally went through one. I didn't wash it. I had another one ready to go because I knew the podcast was coming up, and I think that needs to be my system. But I also have some great cannabis. I got my trusty Chillum glass one hitter from Marley One Hitters. I love these guys. And it's not too clogged up. I have some fine cannabis. I think it's a little bit of an indica. So, just bear with me if I take a nap during this. But no, not at all. I got the biggest coffee cup I got, and then this is the second French press, and this is the first cup out of the second French press. So this is just caffeine delight. Because I did actually prepare for this show. I have some things I want to talk about. I just want to give a shout out to Dina Hesham that did the podcast last week. She was awesome. That was a great podcast, a lot of fun. And then I did a show, shout out to her and all her endeavors. Hopefully we'll have her back on the podcast soon. But then I went out and did a show. So I did the edit. I did the whole podcast. And I love doing the podcast, but it is, you gotta nothing to it but to do it. You gotta do it weekly. And I do keep a steady pace with this thing. And I enjoy doing the solo mission ones just as much as this guest, because I think I still have a lot to learn on doing this and understanding about listening and not talking over people and more or less being relaxed. Like, I've noticed that I get really jumpy, but I'm a natural spaz. But I get jumpy when I do the podcast or do stand-up. It's just been a part of my comedic reaction to the situation. But the older I get, the more I watch myself and become more self-aware that I don't need to always work from that space. A lot of the space that I want to work from is just being super chill, bruh. And that's what I love about doing this podcast, because on the whole, cannabis does make me super chill. Whatever that means. But I do have some on the Patreon. Check us out on the Patreon. We got a ton of video. If you ever want to watch the video portion of this, and we're expanding that vision outward and into television realms very soon. Putting it all together, but doing it all myself and doing all the editing, all the audio, the art. Yeah, I have had friends give me stuff for art, but I still am chopping it up and doing it. Like these things, like the podcasts or even music, or just how the internet world is moving. And the more I see through it, and the more I want to tap out now and then. But the constant flow of content. But you can embrace it in the sense of, hey, I'm going to try to do some quality shit and have fun doing this. And that's what this podcast is all about. I love doing this. I love coffee. I love herb. I love comedy. I love talking. I love making the beats for this. I'm not the best beat maker, but I've made some beats that are out there in the universe because of me. That's a powerful thought. But really, not really. But like all this stuff, it's I kind of say, you're kind of playing with the nothing. There's just space and you fill the space with something that's actually what you want to see. And that's what I always wanted to see. I wanted to see a cannabis coffee talk show, roaming talk show with some music. I always envisioned music with this thing, but I was talking to some people about it. We're pitching possibly to some bigger things beyond the internet, but it's just the rights to music. So that's why you don't see like bands, like only the Tonight Show or some of those bigger network shows have like the rights to. It just costs a lot of money. You got to pay up. But I do have an album coming out. Speaking of rights and music and all of it, but I do have an album coming out that you can. It's coming out on December 22nd. I might as well make the announcement. I'll do it here first, but check out the album. It's coming out on December 22nd, and it's called Caffeinated Dope Rhymes. And it's I've over the years I've been rapping. I've always had music with my comedy. Like I had a jazz band in San Francisco, let's say, and then I started doing more hip hop stuff when I came to New York. That was, the 90s, the early 80s, the golden age is actually the New York. I love the graffiti. That's why I have in the green screen behind us a place called 5 Points. This is a real picture I took. And this was some of the, when I came in 2005, this is like the throwback to the 1980s or the heyday of graffiti. Graffiti actually was like when hip hop rolled out in the 70s. What I remember in terms of like mainstream zeitgeist, graffiti was first, and then it was breakdancing. Graffiti was like in the 70s, like these TV movies came out about graffiti and graffiti writers, and it was almost attached to the Warriors and New York gang culture. And out of that New York gang culture came hip hop. The next generation embraced music instead of violence, which was what was so dope, and which it is so dope about hip hop. So, what was it? Oh, and then the 90s came, or the 80s, and hip hop kind of with Run DMC, they called the golden age, Beasties. But then, Grandmaster Flash was before that. Houdini was like a step before all of them in terms of like mainstream, mainstream hip hop. I mean, there was the Sugar Hill Gang, and then it was I could talk about this forever, but this graffiti is amazing. And looking back on music, and that's what I also wanted to talk about. But check out my album Caffeinated Dope Rhymes. It's has my song Coffee and Weed. It also has Coffee and Weed Go Go remix, Go Go, and then I did a campfire song, but I got the original demo. So there was a couple demos from some of the music projects. So pretty much what it is like some of the major like internet hits that I've had. I wouldn't call them super hits. Nothing went like 2 billion viral, but around the comedy scene, people definitely have heard about Coffee and Weed and Rub My Feet. Those are two joints that I'm definitely proud of, and I'm proud of the video. And I just wanted to get on streaming services. So that's what this project's all about. It's called Caffeinated Dope Rhymes, and it's coming out on December 22nd. And it'll have Coffee and Weed, a couple remixes, and then it has What I Got by Sublime, but a better mix. Like the mix that I came out with this summer is a little bit off. I'm not really proud of it. I love the video, but I got to rework and lay that all out. So that's kind of like the music project that I got going on. I love doing music. I've been making beats. Maybe I'll put a new beat on the end of this joint. But what I went mob deep into the Beatles Get Back documentary. That has been like, oh man, it does get boring after a second, but just like how good the footage is, how legit the time was. I liked all the Beatles. I didn't really realize that this was a negative. This was the last time they played together, but they were going, they were almost 40 years old, and they were going since they were like 17. So it's just a trip to see it um, play out, and that much footage, and it edited by the dude that did Peter Jackson, that did Lord of the Rings. He's got some good editors. He's got some crazy MacBook power. Disney probably got some crazy MacBooks. I want one of those Disney MacBooks to edit movies on. That's what they were rocking with. But it was, I loved just the sitting around the studio and eating sandwiches and smoking and drinking tea and sodas and checking out their crazy coats and Yoko. And then the roof shot was awesome. I've played on a couple roofs. I always love doing stand-up on roofs. I don't know, for some reason, it's a lot of fun. It does make sense for stand-up. For music, I could see that being hard, and they were out of tune, and it was more for the visual, was like, kind of for their TV project they were trying to pull off. But pulling off a movie or a TV project, man, is like, one of the most tedious going to war, things. Well, I mean, some, like a director said, it was like going to war against time. I got to give somebody a shot. I got to give a shout out where I heard that was from Neil Brennan. Neil Brennan, the director and the co-creator of the Chappelle Show. And he said that, shooting movies, any type of movie or video project, is a war against time, because it does take time. Like you said, it sounds like the easiest thing in the world, and then it ends up being very tricky to pull off correctly and have everybody doing their best. And that's what you kind of need to pull off some visuals on a grand scale, like a television show. But but documentaries are just so entertaining in itself. And then with the Beatles, you kind of know the characters through their music. So you kind of get to see it all come to life. I just thought it just laid out great. The sound, I was just putting it on the Beatles Get Back on Disney Plus. I was just putting it on at night right before I go to bed, and it was only good vibes. Sometimes I'd definitely fall asleep, but it was cool to fall asleep to, because they were just like tinkering and working, and then you'd see them pick up a song, a lot of goofballing. And that's what a lot of creativity comes from, the goofball, syndrome. You have to dance with the chaos. I always say, like, not with it. You kind of just have to let go of your ego. A lot of the last few years, I think it's my age. I don't know, but I can see myself like thinking from an egotistical vantage point, and then also see myself working from kind of a soul sonic, futuronic. But my meditation schedule, I have to say, I fell off. Yes, today I didn't do it. And then the other week, I've been juggling a lot of stuff. So, but that's just an excuse. Yesterday I did do it. And at 17 minutes, I do 20 minutes, but it feels just like working out. Like if you don't do it, first you start fiending for it if you do it all the time. But as soon as you don't do it and give it a gap, it gets harder. It's so weird. But I look forward to, but at the same time, I don't want to be like, I struggle with trying to be perfect and making everything perfect. And sometimes you get lost in the future thinking that way. And all you got is today, brah. Today is gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. Gonna smoke some herb and talk about the feeling. I got a feeling that day in the life, and I got a feeling are like my favorite Beatles jam. I got a feeling that's kind of like one of their more raw, like it just sounds really good. And then yeah, what was the other tune I said? Get Back, I mean, is a great jam. That's just a simple rock and roll song. And I love that organ player that they brought in. I love that tone. But I did this gig called The Barn in Egremont, Massachusetts. Shout out to The Barn. And I had a flyer for a dispensary. It's fully legal, but I had to just get in and get out. But they did have some goats there, and I got to hang out with these live goats, which was awesome. And then there was a horse. It's just like when you live in New York bodega land, just seeing live animals, especially the pandemic, and just like naturally, I've been drawn towards, nature, because so much is dictated by computers and laptops and cell phones with everyday life, that it's like the simpler way is like almost a luxury. With it's wild how the flips of the yin and yang, just how it flips, like if you have too much money, you're just like, oh, I'm eating too much, or I'm thinking too much, or I'm not working. Like it checks and balances. It's natural checks and balances. And that's what I always thought about coffee and cannabis. Like they are kind of natural checks and balances to each other. Like the Beatles and Rolling Stones, like everybody talks about them. My old joke was like, that's the yin and yang, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Like, the Beatles were all about helping your fellow man and being nice to your girl. It was all like, help, I need somebody. And we all live in the yellow submarine. And, I want to hold your hand. I want to hold. And then the Rolling Stones were just like hedonistic, like, oh, yeah, I'm wearing leather pants. They're too tight. I'm all strung out. I want to hold your hand and put it on my schlong. And then I'm going to shoot heroin. Yeah, it was like the yin and yang of humanity right there between the two bands. But really, I had a conversation about it. It's really like the Rolling Stones were doing straight blues, and which is a lot more outlaw, like rock and roll pop, rock and roll. What the Beatles were just like mainstream good songs, and the Rolling Stones were trying to do nasty blues, and it ended up some of those songs are definitely kind of creepy and weird. But also, nasty and weird, and just good art. You got to have both the darkness and lightness, and that's what that joke was about. And with just life and music, having something spicy. All chocolate has salt now. It used to not have salt. Now everybody's salting up chocolate. It's just everybody's tastes have exploded because everything has become to our fingertips. I got I love the Cannabis Coffee Hour on the Patreon, the video portion. I literally, this 5 Points had the best graffiti. So I got like a graffiti backdrop. I got this old school TV filter that makes me look like I'm on like a 70s TV show. So check out the Patreon. It's simple to sign up. These videos of the podcast will not be on iTunes or Spotify. This is only, you got to go to the Patreon. That's where we're going to be smoking the most herb. But I didn't grab any herb while I was up there. I just had, I've been doing very small amounts. I did hear a rumor of like street weed, like having fentanyl in it. So I've cut everything like that. Like I definitely know who I'm getting my weed from. But it is getting more and more legal in Massachusetts. It's widely legal, but I feel like kind of like a square that I didn't go to a dispensary. The thing about dispensaries, I'll tell you a secret is you always end up dropping like $100 to $200 if you want to enjoy it. It always, you got to get prepared. And I really had just to make the money on this one and then get ready for Christmas coming up. The bills coming out from all different directions. So, don't forget to sign up for the Patreon. It's at Rob Cantrell Coffee, or like and subscribe. I get it. But I also got to put it out there. And I also want to build this brand. And I also want to make it better and more high quality. I'm learning each time, using different cameras, using different mics. It's 100% me. Eventually I'll get a little bit of a team, but then you got to spell everything out. And I know a lot of podcasts that go out that don't last, that have been folding because everybody thinks it's so easy. This is like my third. I was in it with internet radio. I've done other podcasts, but some people have like a billion podcasts. It's just a wild time, but I get it. I like them. I like audio. And lucky for you, I love cannabis and coffee. So in me. So the show's got to go on. I'm doing a show in February at a spot called Littlefield. Come out to that. I haven't booked it fully yet, but as soon as I start, I got some ideas and I got some feelers out. There's a couple invites out, but for people performing, but we'll see who's going to show on and up. That's always fun, but also another thing that I have to put on my things to do list and knock out. Oh man, I think did the light go out? Or did I shut it off? There we go. I don't know if I ever even had it. Oh. But yeah, I am not meditating. I'm sleeping pretty good. But I will meditate maybe later today. I'm still catching up with a lot of stuff and it's starting to get really cold. And so I've been, kind of laying low, layering up. I already lost my first hat on the subway, but that's going to happen. The thing about winter is you're going to lose a hat and you're going to lose some gloves. It's just how it is. There's always, if you make it through the whole winter without losing gloves or hat, you got you're on top. But not that it's a bad thing, but I always try to back up, and I also don't put a lot of money in that. I've been this new video, I've just listened to a few minutes of it, but it's like 2 hours, but it's all on Japanese minimalism. And the one thing they were talking about is getting rid of stuff that has to be stored. I know so many people are like, what are you talking about? I got 5 storage areas. But the more I know about my ego and just like kind of just learning to let things go or pass through, trying to be more of the observer to a life than, oh, I got to control this. This is what I have to control. And every day seems something brand new that pops up and you think it's going to be the same. And the minute you start fantasizing about what it's going to be, it's always something different. That's the thing is God isn't a hack. But I don't want to make this some podcast. I wrote down a funny thing. I don't know if I'm really spiritual or I just smoke a lot of weed. Because they seem to come and they come together, or even just like, not, rejecting religion altogether. I think cannabis works with that. I don't know. It's more of like a free, open space that you have to like reconsider everything. But one thing you don't have to reconsider is signing up to the Patreon. So just, you could do that. That would be really dope. I don't want to be one of the dudes that is selling the thing, but I also don't want to be so chill that the word doesn't get out. So bear with me as I learn and groove and move. I have a couple writing projects. That's what I'm kind of trying to zero in on. And that's what the meditation, not to get to take the spirituality out of it, the meditation helps with your discipline. And I could use a little bit discipline because doing stand-up comedy and working at night and, doing all these weird gigs, you don't have like a set schedule. You kind of live in goofball land a lot of the time. So the more disciplined, the more set up I can be, the better in terms of adult stuff that comes through. But that ultimately helps my stand-up because it gives me more space and time, that all I got to do is get up there and make it to the shows and get a few laughs, and I can come up with new material. Over the years, I just know how happy I get with new jokes and new thoughts, and kind of where the pocket is to, say the jokes. But with COVID, it's just been like, every time I start going hard in the paint, I'm like, oh, I'm out here, I'm doing it, I'm learning. I'm like, I don't want the numbers to go up. So I kind of back off. But that's what's nice about working on these writing projects or meditation or my health or everything else. This microphone, the thing about using a background in the green screen, like sometimes, your reality cuts through. I never liked that. But maybe we'll not use it. That's why I always like to not use the green screen or the backdrop, because of that, like that weird bubble that goes around you. But why am I drawing attention to that for you guys? I just crushed this huge cup of coffee in this fat bowl. Yeah, the Beatles, that was good. That's pretty much, I know everybody's watching these other shows. I haven't really gotten into them. A lot of YouTube, but then I try to watch educational stuff, or at least like something that's good, like the Japanese minimalism, and then a little news. But it's so weird that you think news is good for you. So you're like, not that it's good for you, but you got to be informed somehow, a little bit. You just don't want to be overburdened with it. So that's what the balance is that I'm working on. Oh my God, this coffee's great. I mean, it's a medium roast. It was in this red bag, but I already put it in my jar. But it was the last of the jar, and it was a medium roast, but it was a little bit darker. It was like a dark bean. It had kind of that French roast aftertaste, which I don't mind, and it definitely wakes you up. Coffee and cannabis, like I do prefer a sativa. I mean, sour diesel, my ideal strain of all time is outdoor grown sour diesel. That's kind of what I'm looking for. But it's like pizza, I'll take it. I'll take an indica, I'll take a sativa, especially in New York. But I heard, like, I almost signed up for the medical thing this week, because I do think they're going to make it simpler. They need to get more simple about it. I hear New Jersey's wide open, but the stuff I'm hearing is like very underground, not underground, but like everybody's just like, it's like the green rush, like bodegas are selling it. Somebody was saying like you have to buy socks or something and then you can buy some weed off of them. But some of it's got to be regulated, or the funk will get in there from these underground markets, or I don't know. I just hope he just is safe, and that's what this podcast is all about. Just having a little bit of herb and having a little bit of coffee, and talking about some shit that I watched on Netflix, and visiting some coffee shops and smoking some more herb and talking to some cool comedians about music. I guess Spotify, man, that's the crazy thing that's been going down, is they took my album off of Spotify. They took my stand-up album. There's this big thing going down between stand-up comedy and Spotify, that Spotify doesn't want to pay the proper rights or the performance rights, which all the other streaming services do, which is very odd. So I do have this new hip hop album, or I don't know if it's hip hop, it's music album coming out with rap styles and go-go styles, definitely influenced. With my music, I just think I make my type of music. Stuff I want to vibe to. That's what music is. That's what comedy is. Stuff you want to laugh to, and music is stuff you want to vibe to. Bold too, just a second one hitter of the show. A lot of times I'll start talking and I get so insecure, not stop. You know what I'm saying? That I can't stop talking, that I can't really enjoy the cannabis. And then after the show, I'm like, oh man, I just talked for an hour straight, and then I'll have some more cannabis. So I love doing this show. I usually take a big fat nap afterwards. I love graffiti. What do you think it is about graffiti that people love? I like the colors, and I like the three-dimensional design, and I love the idea of something out of nothing. Some people like how it's illegal and underground. I like that, but I don't know if that was the initial thing that drew me. But if you look, this is 5 Points, and 5 Points literally was like a bombed out warehouse that the city allowed, even the cops allowed graffiti writers to write on, which is pretty amazing. And this was right in Queens. This is very near where Nas was born and rocked out. But this is Long Island City. But this is all knocked down. But 5 Points was near the old creek in the cave, and I would go over there and check out these check out this dude's helicopter. Sick. I have a rap about helicopters. It's not on this album. If this album does good, I have some more like B-sides and tracks laying the ground. I may do a Caffeinated Dope Rhymes part 2. Just like kind of like my B albums, and just kind of more of demos. And to figure out how to roll this stuff out, because I'm doing Caffeinated Dope Rhymes is not through a label or a comedy service or anything. Pure Uncut Joy is my stand-up album, and that is on 800 Pound Gorilla, and that's how it got taken down, because they're the ones talking to them about paying us, which I do think they should pay us. But it's such a wild time with content and how people consume it, and how people are maybe getting overloaded with it, because everybody's going for it. At least, I don't know, maybe I say that like everybody's got a podcast or everybody does stand up, but I don't think so, because I think it's just people I run into, because that's what I do. And I write. I just got to get a little bit more discipline. I was doing my pages like every day, right when I wake up, like actually right after I meditated. I would write. I was about to say masturbated as a joke, but I thought that was a little hacky. But yeah, I have been doing like morning pages and writing for like 25 minutes. I'll put 25 minutes on a timer and then just sit there and write whatever thoughts. So if I had any like anger issues or anything, I just write it all out there. And then it would end up going into jokes, or a lot of times with a lot of this stuff is like letting go of trying to control the creativity and just doing the practice. And by doing the practice, the good shit comes naturally. That's what I've tried to do. It does take a long time though. As Tom Petty said, the waiting is the hardest part. Every day, one more chart. Love some Tom Petty, but Tom Petty still rocks. Definitely a go-to on the Sirius XM. I do a lot of Sirius XM, not a lot, but some, and a lot of Spotify. But all these updates, I was in a messed up update zone. Everything was not updated. I was off. They're playing weird stuff. It was my Spotify. It wasn't working. Spotify, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's like Google. It's like I just been thinking about fame and success. Like it just happens to the point where people don't get to be told no, and they don't know where the right place is to stand. And I don't know. It's when you're that big of a company, I guess is what or that big of an entertainer, that big of a band. There comes a price. And I think I didn't see the price earlier, but I think it's playing itself out a little bit. It's gotten cold out there. It's like 32 degrees, man. I'm going to go out there, but I'm going to take it real slow and well prepared. The thing about the winter, if you're prepared, and the only way to be prepared is to go through it. But I got some good boots this year. I got some good socks. I'm actually wearing the most basic Hanes white socks, but they're awesome. No holes in them, and I just got out of the shower, and they're perfect. And I'm rocking out a fun podcast full of cannabis. I do have a bit of a mush mouth, and it's weird when you start having mush mouth, like when you smoke a lot, and then you learn to like slow down to the point of hearing it, and then moving, and then like choosing your words. But that's what's tricky, is like you kind of want to let it rip. So that's why I'm like, fuck it, just let the mush mouth be the mush mouth. But I definitely want to cut out the ahs and ums. And I applaud you guys for sticking here and subscribing and liking the podcast, because I love doing it. I'm just finished this big fat cup of coffee. And I just finished 2 bowls of my one hitter. But I just really wanted to come on here and talk about the Beatles Get Back and how good their coats are. Those dudes, that was, first of all, Ringo was the coolest. Out of all of them, the least ego and just like naturally cool and calm and just kind of ever flowing. And that's what the beat was, The Beatles, they were all, that is the simplest, dopest name, and I didn't get it till much later. It's about backbeat. It's about the beat, and that's what I think about early rock and roll. The beat was very swing style. You want to have some swing in your beat. On this podcast, Bill Bird talks about swing and drums, and then go-go music in DC always has swing. It's not as syncopated. It's not as you only get swing from organic. You can put some swing on there on the computer, but it doesn't really swing. It's a pocket, and you got to rock it. But I appreciate you guys all tuning in. I think we're going to sign off with that. I love you. More to come, more coffee, and more cannabis. Peace, love. I'm out. Bye.